Hi guys, Marcy here with Keechii Style and welcome to my channel. I'm so excited because I am celebrating the launch of my very first indie pattern, the Sia Dress. The Sia Dress is a strapless A-line dress with a corset style bodice and a zip up front. She has front seam pockets that are hidden just a little bit and a belted waist. Sia comes in 3 views. View A is going to be your shorter view. View B is your corset top, and view C is the longer version of the dress. For this so long, I'll be doing view A. If you haven't already grabbed your pattern, I'll put the link below, and it comes with your A4 letter file to print at home, your AO if you want to do copy shop, and a projector file if you want to use a projector to cut your pattern. So before we get started, if designing and sewing is your vibe, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and let's get into it. Make sure you cut, mark, and interface all your pattern pieces before you get started. Let's start with our main interface bodice pieces with right sides together. We're going to place the front side bodice to the front bodice, matching the raw edges and matching the notches. Pin those together, and then we'll take it to the machine and stitch it. Make sure you do it for both sides. Once the front and the front side bodice pieces are stitched, it should look like this. Now you're going to grab your back bodice piece which you cut on the fold and your 2 back side bodice pieces. With the right sides together, you're going to place the back side bodice piece to the back bodice, matching the notches and the raw edges. Clip or pin both sides down, then we're going to take it to the machine and give it a stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now that you've constructed your back bodice pieces and your front bodice pieces with right sides together, we're going to match the back bodice side to the front bodice side, matching notches and raw edges. Go ahead and pin or clip the sides together, and then we'll take it to the machine and give it a stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Next, you're going to take the bodice lining pieces and you're going to construct them in the same manner as you did the main pieces of your bodice. For the bodice boning, you'll need your extra wide double folded binding. You're going to cut your bias tape the respective length of each bodice seam. Press the bias tape open, leaving the single sides folded. You should have 6 separate pieces matching the seams, and this will be your casing for your boning. Go ahead and place the bias tape wrong sides facing over the respective bodice seam with the seam running through the middle of the bias tape, and pin it. Repeat this step for your remaining 5 seams. Once all your bias tape is pinned down, we'll take it to the machine, and on the right side, top stitch 3/8 of an inch from the seam through the fabric and the bias tape edges. Make sure to do this on both sides of the bodice seams. Complete the top stitch for all bodice seams, leaving the top and bottom edge of the bias tape open so that we can go back and insert the boning later. When your bias tape is stitched down, this is what it should look like. Now let's move on to the pockets. You may want to finish the edges of all 4 pockets and skirt panels with a serger overlock before we get started. With right sides facing and edges lined up, pin the pocket lining to the front skirt between the notches and lines. You're going to stitch the pocket to the front skirt using a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. You can go ahead and understitch the seam of the lining pocket to the front skirt close to the pocket seam. Now take your front side skirt and main pocket, and with right sides facing and notches lined up, pin or clip them together. Then you can take it to the machine and stitch it with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now with right sides facing, place the front side skirt and the front skirt together, matching the pockets, the pocket seams, notches, and lining up the edges. Then pin or clip it together. And you're going to stitch 5/8 of an inch seam allowance down the side of the skirt and around the pocket seam. Go ahead and do this for both sides, being certain not to sew the opening of the pocket. Now with your scissors, you're going to clip the corners of the pockets to the seam stitching, being careful not to clip the skirt seams. Do this for both skirt pieces. Use your iron or pressing tool to press the seams open in the pocket to the front, and let's move on to our back skirt. With the right sides together, matching notches and lining up seam edges, pin the back side skirt to the back skirt. Repeat this step for both back skirt sides. Now we can take it to the machine and stitch the back side seams using a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Go ahead and press your back seams open using a pressing tool or an iron. Now let's go ahead and assemble our front skirt and our back skirt together. With the right sides together, matching the notches and lining up the seam edges, pin the back skirt to the back side skirt. After your skirt is pinned, you can take it to the machine and stitch it using a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now we're going to take our skirt and we're going to top stitch the skirt seams 3/8 of an inch from the seam on both sides. Do this for the full skirt. Don't forget that when you're top stitching the front skirt and the front side skirt, to stop at the pocket so that you don't sew the pocket close. Now we're going to attach our bodice to our skirt. So with right sides together, match the bottom edge of the bodice to the top edge of the skirt, matching the notches and lining up the seams. And then you're going to pin or clip the two together. Once that's done, you can take it to the machine and stitch the bodice to the skirt with a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. For the boning option, cut the boning 1 inch shorter than the seam casing and insert each boning piece into the respective casing. Now that your boning is in your bodice, you can go ahead and press your seam up using your iron. I went ahead and secured the top open end of the boning casing so that the boning doesn't slip out. I did this with my clips, but before we move on, we will be basting the top edge of the bodice using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once the bodice is basted, let's move on to your zipper. With the right sides together, we're going to place the right side of your zipper with the zipper stop at 1/2 inch from the top edge. You're going to pin it in place, making sure that the long edge of the zipper is 1/4 of an inch from the edge of the garment. Go ahead and pin your zipper all the way down, making sure to mark where your notches intersect with your zipper and where the seam intersects so that you can match up the other side. Now we'll take our garment to the machine, and with a zipper foot, we'll stitch the zipper down the front of the garment close to the zipper teeth. Now I'm turning my garment inside out so that I can place the other side of the zipper to the open edge of the garment. With the right sides together, I'm placing the zipper stop 1/2 inch from the top edge and placing the long edge of the zipper 1/4 inch from the edge of the garment. Make sure to pin this all the way down while matching your markings to your seam and to your notches. Now take it to the machine and stitch your zipper in place. Grab your completed bodice lining and fold 3/8 of an inch hem on the bottom edge of the lining and press it up. Now with the right sides together, we're going to pin or clip the top edges of the bodice lining to the top edge of the garment, matching up the seams. Pin or clip. Machine stitch the bodice lining to the garment using a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. When attaching the bodice lining to the garment, make sure to stitch the lining close to the zipper teeth using your zipper foot. You're going to want to back stitch at the bodice hem and stop just after the bodice hem. Now you can go ahead and clip your corners and trim your seam allowance. You want to underline the garment by pressing the seam to the lining and the lining away from the garment and stitching close to the seam edge. Go ahead and turn the bodice lining right side out and give it a press, paying close attention to your corners. Now we're going to top stitch 5/8 of an inch from the zipper seam all the way down the front zipper, stopping 4 inches for the hem for views A and C and 1 inch for view B. This is also going to create the last boning casing for your bodice. So don't forget to cut the last piece of boning for your bodice, cutting it 1 inch shorter than the casing. Then insert the boning through the lining casing that you're creating close to the zipper. Once you finish top stitching, go ahead and slip stitch the lining hem at the waistline, closing up the bodice. Now let's move on to your hem. You should have stopped your top stitching 4 inches from the skirt edge. You're going to fold over the center seams 5/8 of an inch onto the skirt with right sides facing. Pin the seam in place and then take it to your machine and stitch the fold across 1 inch from the bottom edge. Go ahead and clip the corners of the seam and remove excess hem to reduce the bulk. Now you can turn your corner hems with the right side out and create your hem fold. Go ahead and press your corners and a 1 inch hem from the bottom edge. Finally pin your hem and top stitch close to the hem edge. Now let's construct your belt. You're going to need your belt pattern piece, which is piece 10, with the right sides facing. Fold the belt lengthwise, matching the raw edges, and pin along the open edge. Once you're finished pinning, you can take it to the machine and stitch 1/2 an inch from the edge along the entire length of the belt, leaving a 3 inch opening in the middle of the seam for turning. Before turning your belt, go ahead and clip the corners and trim the seam to reduce the bulk. Clip the seams to your 3 inch opening, being careful not to clip the stitches. and then press back the seam of your 3-inch opening with an iron. Now you can turn your belt with your turning tool, give it a press, and top stitch 1/4 of an inch from the edge. Grab your 1.5 inch D-rings and thread one end of the belt through the D-ring. Fold the belt end over the flat ends of the D-rings about 1 1/4 inch. Pin and stitch the belt end close to the edge, then stitch again 1/4 of an inch from the last stitch. Your belt is finished and your Sia dress or top is complete. All that's left is to style, wear, and repeat.